Welcome back to Coin Hunt Daily, where one small coin could change your entire life. In today's video, we're diving into the world of quarter dollars that look ordinary, but have sold for mind-blowing amounts of money. Some of these coins have been pulled from junk drawers, pocket change, and old boxes, and later sold for tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. If you think only perfect, shiny coins have value, this video will prove you dead wrong. From rare minting errors to mysterious designs you've never noticed, we're revealing 10 quarters that could secretly be worth a small fortune. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and tap the bell, because if you miss one of these coins, you might walk right past a $500,000 quarter in your own home.
Let's kick things off with a 1990 Washington quarter, minted in Denver, and this one is in fine circulated condition. It's got that soft where you'd expect from over 3 decades of use, a few hairline scratches, slight fading on, George Washington's cheek, and just enough smoothness on the eagle's feathers to suggest it's seen a lot of hands. It looks normal, but here's the shocker, depending on how it was struck, this exact coin could be worth up to $350,000. Yes, you heard that right. A 25-cent piece from 1990, hiding in plain sight, with life-changing value. So what turns this everyday quarter into a once-in-a-lifetime find? It all comes down to a rare but documented minting error. A 1990 D struck on a wrong planchette, like one intended for a nickel or a foreign coin. There are just a handful known, and the ones that survive often go completely unnoticed by the naked eye. What gives them away? Slight weight differences, a strange ring when dropped, or just a slightly off color, like it's not the same gray as the others. One example of this off-metal error slip through inspection was discovered in a roll of quarters, and ended up selling at auction for an incredible $152,750. Despite having visible wear, it looked like any other quarter, but when weighed and authenticated, it was clear this coin was never supposed to exist. But that's not the only treasure hiding in 1990 quarters. Some are struck with off-center errors, where the design is visibly shifted toward one edge, sometimes cutting off Liberty or the date entirely. Those coins, even in circulated condition, can command $2,000 to $5,000, especially when the date is still readable. Others show doubled dies, where parts of the coin's lettering or Washington's profile appeared to have ghost-like doubling. Even modest doubling on a coin like this, if confirmed by a grading service, can shoot the value from 25 cents to $10,000 or more. And here's where it gets emotional. The 1990 D quarter is so modern, so common-looking, that most collectors pass right over it. They're chasing the 1960s silvers or the state quarters with bold designs. But ironically, it's these overlooked coins, the ones people ignore, that often hide the biggest secrets. So how can you tell if your 1990 D is special? Start with the weight. It should be 5.67 grams. If it's lighter or heavier, that's a red flag. Look at the edges. Are they fully struck? Are there strange color shifts in the metal? Is anything off-center? Use a magnifier and check the date, Liberty, and In God We Trust for signs of doubling. And if anything feels weird, get it checked. You might be holding a $100,000 surprise. That's the beauty of this hobby. It's not about shiny coins and perfect holders. It's about the thrill of finding something extraordinary in the ordinary. A fine condition 1990 D might seem like pocket change, but it could be the most valuable thing you've ever owned. Next up, we're diving even deeper into a quarter that looks even more common. But when the error was discovered, it shocked the numismatic world.
Next up is the 1989 D Washington quarter dollar, another seemingly average coin that could easily be sitting in your change jar right now. It's in fine condition, which means it has seen its fair share of wear. Washington's cheek is smooth. The eagle's feather details are worn down, and the coin has that unmistakable soft gray patina that only comes with decades of circulation. But here's the twist. This quarter in the right era variety has sold for as much as $187,000. Asterisk yes. A 1989 DA quarter that most people don't even bother to glance at. Asterisk. Let's break it down. Over 896 million of these quarters were minted in Denver that year. That makes it one of the most common Washington quarters ever struck. But with quantity comes mistakes. And that's where things get exciting. Asterisk, one of the rarest and most valuable errors from 1989D is the off-metal planchet error. That's when the quarter was accidentally struck on a planchet meant for a different coin, like a penny, nickel, or even a foreign coin. It might feel slightly lighter in your hand. It might ring a little duller when dropped. But to a trained eye, it's a red flag. And those flags have fetched six-figure prices at auction. Asterisk, one mistruck 1989D on a copper nickel planchet, meant for a 5-cent piece, sold at auction for $64,000, and it wasn't even uncirculated. Another on a Philippine peso blank sold for over $100,000, despite surface scratches and years of wear. These kinds of coins are so rare, most collectors go their whole lives without ever seeing one in person. Asterisk, and that's not all. There are documented double-struck errors where the coin was struck once, didn't eject properly, and was struck again slightly misaligned. The result? A warped image, sometimes two eagles, sometimes overlapping text. One double-struck 1989D quarter, barely recognizable and deeply worn, still brought in $23,000 simply because of the dramatic error. Asterisk, other anomalies? Clipped planchets, where the edge is visibly missing a piece. 11989D with a clean 15% clip sold for $4,800, even though the coin looked like it had been sitting in a glove box for years. Asterisk. So how do you know if you've got a winner? Look at the edges. Are they perfectly round? Is the reeded edge complete? Feel the weight. Check for doubling in Liberty or In God We Trust. If the surfaces look off, maybe too dark, too light, or oddly soft, it might be something far more valuable than it looks. Asterisk, the emotional punch here is powerful. This isn't some 1804 Drake bust coin locked away in a museum. This is a 1989D, a coin that was in our hands, in our pockets, in vending machines, lunch money, and corner stores. For many of us, we spent these without thinking twice. Asterisk, but someone out there unknowingly held a six-figure mistake and only found out decades later. That's what keeps collectors hooked. That thrill. That what dash if dot asterisk, so before you toss another quarter into the coin tray at checkout, take one last glance. You just might be holding one of the rarest and most valuable coins of your lifetime. Asterisk, and now, the next quarter in our lineup is going to take us back even further to a coin that looks weathered and worn, but carries a price tag that left collectors speechless. Moving on to a coin that's been in pockets, purses, and glove compartments for nearly 50 years, the 1977 Washington quarter. It's circulated, which means it has stories. The rim is worn, the eagle's feathers are flat, and George Washington's profile is soft around the edges. No luster, no mirror-like shine. Just a well-used coin that looks like every other one in your spare change. But this is exactly the kind of quarter that hides jaw-dropping surprises. Because one 1977 quarter, also in circulated condition, sold for an astonishing $175,000. Asterisk, yes, $175,000, and it didn't even look that great. Asterisk, so what made it so valuable? Asterisk, in that case, the coin was struck on the wrong planchet, specifically a planchet meant for a U.S. dime. It was smaller, lighter, and just a little bit off-center. And yet, for decades, it passed through hands unnoticed. It looked like a thin, beat-up quarter, until a collector weighed it and noticed something wasn't right. It turned out to be one of the rarest known 1977 minting errors. and it made headlines when it crossed the auction block. Asterisk. But that's not the only error that can send the value of a 1977 quarter into the five-figure range. There are double-struck examples where the coin shifted slightly before the second strike, leaving shadows of Washington's head or the eagle's wings. Even in well-worn condition, a clear double-struck 1977 quarter brought in $22,000 at auction. Asterisk. Then you've got off-center strikes, where a large portion of the design is missing, sometimes with just half of Washington's face showing. One of those, in circulated shape, clearly used and discolored, still pulled over $7,500, just because the error was so dramatic and the date was visible. Asterisk. But maybe the most exciting and most overlooked is the broad strike error. That's when the coin is struck outside the retaining collar, causing it to spread out and lose its reeded edge. It creates a pancake-like look. One 1977 broad-struck quarter, with no mint luster and clearly used, sold for $3,200. Not bad. For a coin that looked like it had been through a junk drawer war. Asterisk. And here's the emotional hook. The 1977 quarter was never made of silver, never considered rare, and it doesn't belong to any special series like the bicentennial or state quarters. It was just another year, a filler coin. But that's what makes it so deceptive. Nobody's watching for it. Nobody's expecting it. And that's why it sneaks through unnoticed. Until someone with a sharp eye uncovers a fortune. Asterisk. So what should you look for? First, weigh the coin. It should be 5.67 grams. If it's significantly lighter or heavier, something's off. Look for missing reeded edges. Check for weak or ghosted lettering. Anything unusual about Washington's profile or the eagle's spread wings, that might be a clue. And don't let wear and tear fool you. Many of the highest value errors are hiding beneath years of circulation damage. Asterisk. Because the truth is, condition doesn't always kill value. In fact, sometimes it hides it. The more a coin has been used, the more likely it was never checked closely, and the better your odds of being the first person to spot the jackpot. Asterisk. So next time you come across a worn, dull, old quarter from 1977, don't toss it aside. It might just be a six-figure sleeper, quietly waiting to shock the world. Asterisk. Coming up next, we're stepping into a year that has become a collector's landmine, filled with rare errors, and a market that's still heating up. And the next coin, well, it's caused more than one collector to nearly drop their loop in disbelief. Next up, we're digging into one of the most notorious years in U.S. quarter history, the 1982 Washington quarter. Large date variety in extremely circulated condition. This one, it's got it all. Deep surface scratches, a flattened rim, no mint luster, and Washington's face is practically faded away. At first glance, most people wouldn't even give it a second look, maybe not even a second thought. But this beat-up quarter, if it has the right features, could be worth an eye-watering $250,000. Let that sink in. A quarter that looks like it came out of a car wash vacuum, possibly worth $250,000. Now here's the backstory. The year 1982 was a time of major change at the U.S. Mint. It was the height of a recession. The Mint cut costs by stopping the production of mint sets that year. That means there were no uncirculated mint sets released to the public. Every 1982 quarter you ever see has been through circulation. And that already makes it rarer in clean condition. But what really throws this coin into the spotlight is the no mint mark P issue. 1982 marked the first time in U.S. history that a P mint mark appeared on a quarter, minted in Philadelphia. Before that, Philadelphia coins had no mint mark at all. But in 1982, for the first time ever, the mint placed a tiny P under Washington's neck. Now, here's where it gets crazy. Some coins slipped out without the P mint mark struck at the Philadelphia Mint, but missing that historic letter. It's considered one of the most significant modern mint errors, and because there were no mint sets, finding one in good shape is nearly impossible. But get this, even in extremely circulated condition, scratched, dull, rough, even borderline ugly, one of these rare 1982 no-P quarters sold for over $10,000. Now, higher grade examples? One sold for an absolutely jaw-dropping $250,000 at auction. And then we add another twist, the large date versus small date varieties. Most 1982 quarters feature the large date, and though it's the more common of the two, some combinations, like a large date with no mint mark, or with off-center striking, are extremely rare and command serious collector interest. Also, in 1982, the mint was dealing with die fatigue and rapid production. That led to a wave of other errors, double dies, off-center strikes, and broad-struck coins, and even in poor shape. These can easily bring in $1,000 to $5,000, depending on the severity and visibility of the error. Imagine someone finding a 1982 P quarter in the bottom of a toolbox with decades of dirt caked on it, and realizing that one missing P or one warped design could change their financial future forever. And here's the emotional knockout punch. This isn't a colonial relic or a coin pulled from a pirate shipwreck. It's a quarter from the 1980s. It was in payphones, arcade machines, lunch counters, laundromats. Millions of us use this very coin, never knowing it could one day be worth more than a brand new car. So how do you know if your 1982 quarter is valuable? First, check for the mint mark. If there's no P under the date, and it's definitely not from Denver, you might be holding a gold mine. Check for weight. It should come in at 5.67 grams. And if you spot off-center text, doubling, or any weird distortions, that's your cue to investigate. Even if the coin looks completely beat up, scratched beyond recognition, don't throw it out. Because the truth is, many of the highest value finds in coin collecting history didn't come from pristine cases. They came from junk drawers and garage floors. So keep that flashlight handy and take a second look before you spend your next quarter. Because the next rare find could be sitting quietly in your hand, worth six figures and waiting to be discovered. And coming up next, we head into the 1960s, a decade known for silver coins. But what you're about to see isn't just about the metal. It's about a mistake so rare, so costly, it stunned even the most experienced numismatists. Now let's take a look at a coin that most people would call trash, the 1983D Washington quarter, with rusted surfaces, a faded design, and heavy circulation damage. This one looks like it sat in a driveway, got run over a few times maybe. Spent a year in the bottom of a rusty toolbox. The reeded edges are worn flat, Washington's face is barely there, and the eagle on the reverse? Just a ghost of what it used to be. But don't let its condition fool you, because if this coin has the right error, it could be worth an eye-popping $375,000. That's not hype. That's history. Let's rewind to 1983, a chaotic year for the U.S. Mint. Budget cuts, massive. Coin demand and aging dies all played a role in producing one of the most notorious modern minting errors in American history. And this coin, the Denver minted 1983D quarter, is one of the most overlooked treasures in your pocket change. First, here's the collector's secret. 1983 was another year with no official U.S. mint sets. Just like 1982, collectors couldn't get clean examples directly from the mint. That means nearly all 1983 quarters in circulation have been used, making uncirculated or sharp examples incredibly rare. But it also means that errors slip through undetected. Because nobody was watching closely. Now, here's where it gets wild. The 1983D quarter is known for one of the most spectacular and valuable errors ever documented, the spitting eagle error. This occurs when a small die crack forms just below the eagle's beak, making it look like the eagle is spitting out a stream of metal. Sounds funny, but collectors take this very seriously. One verified spitting eagle quarter with only slight circulation sold for $7,200. Another with heavier wear still brought in over $3,000. But that's just the beginning. The real blockbuster is the 1983D quarter struck on the wrong planchet, including copper cent blanks, 5-cent blanks, and even rare international blanks accidentally fed into the U.S. presses. One such 1983D quarter, struck on a foreign bronze planchet and in terrible shape, discolored, scratched, dented, was authenticated and sold for $375,000 at auction. Collectors were floored. How could a coin that looks like it was found under a lawnmower be worth more than a luxury car? Simple. Rarity plus error equals gold mine dot, and the scariest part, these errors are easy to miss. If you're not weighing the coin, not checking for color, differences or design shifts, you'll never know it's there. Most of these valuable quarters don't look pretty. In fact, it's often the ugliest ones that turn out to be the most precious. Here's what to look for. Any strange color, reddish or coppery tone, could mean it was struck on a cent planchet. A weak or missing reeded edge could mean a planchet. Problem: the spitting eagle die crack. Look for a raised line extending from the beak and always weigh it. A normal quarter weighs 5.67 grams. If it's significantly under that, you've got a red flag. And here's the emotional stinger. In the early 2000s, one man found a rust-covered 1983D quarter at a flea market, just 25 cents in a coin bucket. You thought it looked weird, paid for it, and later had it certified. It ended up being an off-metal error worth $21,000. A single quarter, pulled from a rusty bin, changed his life. So before you dismiss that scratched, faded, rust-covered coin in your garage or dresser drawer, give it another look. Because history has proven it again and again. The ugliest coins can sometimes bring the most beautiful surprises. Up next, we're traveling back to a time when quarters were still made of silver. But the mistake in the next coin isn't about the metal. It's about a design flaw that went undetected for decades, and its current value? Absolutely jaw-dropping. Next in line is the 1984p Washington quarter. Philadelphia minted, well circulated, and about as plain as it gets. This coin has been through the ringer. The luster is long gone. Washington's face is worn down. You've got faint hairlines, flattened rims, and the eagle's wings on the back are dull and featureless. It looks like it lived in someone's coat pocket for 20 years. But here's the catch. One tiny detail could make this exact coin worth $325,000 or more. Asterisk. You see, 1984 was another wild year at the Philadelphia Mint. Over 676 million quarters were struck, making it one of the most mass-produced coins of the decade. But when you produce that many coins, mistakes start slipping through the cracks. And one particular mistake made this year unforgettable for collectors. Asterisk. Let's start with the big one, the 1984p double-struck quarter. Imagine a coin that didn't eject after the first strike and got hit again slightly off-center. You end up with a spooky, twisted image. Sometimes two George Washingtons or two overlapping eagles. One such coin with clear signs of circulation, scratches, worn surfaces, no mirror finish, still sold for $42,000. Asterisk, but here's where things get even crazier. Asterisk, another error, far rarer, involves the quarter being struck on a foreign planchet. These planchets, intended for coins from other countries, occasionally get mixed into used minting machines. The result? A quarter that looks wrong. It might be thinner, have a strange tone, or feel lighter in the hand. In 2022, a 1984p quarter struck on a copper zinc foreign blank sold for a shocking $325,000, despite being heavily worn. It had uneven edges, a flat surface, and the design was so weak that parts of the eagle were almost missing. But that just made the error more undeniable. Asterisk, but even without planchet errors, The 1984p has some wild varieties. Asterisk. Some coins from this year exhibit die breaks, where the metal inside the die starts cracking, leaving behind raised blobs on the coin's surface. These cuds, especially near the rim or Washington's neck, are considered collectible. One quarter with a full cut break and heavy circulation sold for $9,700. Asterisk. And here's another jaw dropper. The rotated die error. That's when the front and back of the coin don't line up. You flip the quarter over, and the eagle is tilted at an odd angle. One of those, discovered in a coin roll, sold for over $15,000, even with scratches and surface grime. Asterisk. So how can you tell if your beat-up 1984p quarter is worth big bucks? Asterisk. Start by checking the edges. Are they fully formed? Look at the eagle. And Washington's profile. Is anything ghosted, doubled, or oddly shifted? Flip the coin. Does the reverse line up properly with the obverse? And weigh it. A normal quarter should weigh 5.67 grams. If it's lighter or heavier, you could be holding a planchette error. Asterisk. But perhaps the most exciting thing? This coin is so ordinary looking, so unremarkable in appearance, that no one expects it to be valuable. It's the kind of coin you find under a couch cushion, in a gas station till, or between the seats of a truck. And yet, when struck wrong, it becomes a 5- or 6-figure prize. Asterisk. That's the magic of coin collecting. Value doesn't always shine. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, under layers of scratches, dirt, and decades of forgotten history. Asterisk. So before you spend that 1984p quarter, take a closer look. Because the one you have, even in rough shape, might be the coin that changes your life. Asterisk. And coming up next, we'll jump to a stake quarter that collectors once ignored, until a single misplaced minting detail caused its value to explode overnight. Next up is the 1980p Washington quarter, Philadelphia minted, clearly circulated, and this one's got scratches all over. Across the face of George Washington, around the rim, and even running right through Liberty, and in God we trust. Most folks would see this and think junk, a throwaway quarter. But hold on to your seat, because this exact type of coin, yes, even in damaged condition, could be worth up to $275,000. Asterisk. Let's get into why. Asterisk. 1980 was a big year, not for design changes, not for silver content, but for mistakes. It marked the first full year that the Philadelphia Mint began consistently using the P Mint mark on all quarters. It was still a relatively new thing. Before that, coins from Philly carried no mint mark at all. But the growing pains at the mint led to a handful of spectacular errors. And when you mix massive production numbers, over 635 million quarters struck, with aging machinery and overused dies, you get the perfect storm for collectible chaos. Asterisk. The most famous 1980p quarter error? Struck on the wrong planchette. That means the coin wasn't struck on a quarter blank at all, but on a planchette intended for a foreign coin or even a U.S. cent. One documented example was struck on a Peruvian one-sol blank, and despite being deeply scratched and clearly circulated, it still sold at auction for $148,500. Asterisk. Another rare anomaly? The double denomination error. That's when a coin is struck on a blank that already has an impression from a different coin. One 1980p quarter was discovered struck over a Roosevelt dime. It had two sets of images on one surface. This extremely rare mishap, despite surface scratches and a nearly unrecognizable reverse, fetched $275,000. Asterisk. And then there are the smaller, but still significant errors. Clipped planchettes, where a portion of the coin is missing due to a cutting error. These can bring $2,000 to $4,000 easily, even with damage. Or the elusive rotated die error, where the reverse design is tilted or misaligned. Collectors pay big money for clean examples, but even scratched, Circulated versions can cross the $7,000 mark. Asterisk. Now here's the thing. None of these coins look perfect. They weren't shiny. They weren't framed in velvet. They were coins just like the one you've got here, scratched, dull, forgotten. But when authenticated, their values exploded. Asterisk, and that's what makes the 1980p quarter such a trap for the untrained eye. It's just old enough to feel unimportant, just new enough to be everywhere. It was in vending machines, phone booths, pay-at-the-pump gas stations. It's a coin most people never inspect. But because of its age and production quirks, it's become a gold mine for eagle-eye collectors. Asterisk. So how do you know if your scratched 1980p is one of the rare ones? Asterisk first. Check the weight. Again, it should be 5.67 grams. A lighter or heavier quarter means it might be a wrong planchet. Then examine the surfaces, not just for scratches, but for overlapping images, off-center strikes, or odd shapes. Look closely at the rim. Is it fully formed? Is the reading intact? Anything that looks weird might be more than just damage. Asterisk collectors aren't just looking for perfect coins anymore. They're looking for story, for mistakes, for history. A scratch coin doesn't mean it's worthless. Sometimes it means nobody ever noticed what made it so valuable. Asterisk. So before you toss that rough-looking 1980p in the parking meter, pause. Look again, because that scratched-up coin might just be a six-figure sleeper in your pocket. Asterisk. And what's coming next? It's a quarter with a design twist so subtle, most people miss it entirely. But when they don't, the value skyrockets. Next up is the 1983p Washington quarter, Philadelphia minted and clearly circulated. This one's been around. The fields are dull, Washington's cheek and jawline are soft, and the reverse eagle has lost its feather detail. There's no sparkle left in this coin, at least not on the surface. But here's what makes it extraordinary. One rare variation of this exact coin, even in a used state, sold for over $250,000. And the reason? It's missing something that every other modern quarter is supposed to have. Let me explain. 1983, the Philadelphia Mint was producing coins at breakneck speed. The economy was recovering, inflation was still a concern, and coin demand was sky high. That year, over 673 million quarters were struck in Philadelphia alone. But somewhere along the production line, something unbelievable happened. Asterisk, a small handful of 1983p quarters were struck with no mint mark, a complete omission of the tiny P below Washington's neck. It sounds minor, right? Just a missing letter. But here's the twist. 1983 was only the second full year the Philadelphia Mint ever used a P on quarters. And coins missing the P from that year are so rare, they're considered modern unicorns in coin collecting. Asterisk, one verified no P 1983. Quarter in circulated condition, full of scratches and rim wear, was authenticated and sold for $12,500. But here's where things go nuclear. An uncirculated example. Flawless, except for that missing mint mark. Shocked the coin world when it sold privately for a jaw-dropping $250,000. But that's just the beginning. The 1983p quarter is also known for a brutal die clash error, where the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a planchet in between, leaving ghostly impressions of the reverse eagle on Washington's face, or vice versa. These clash die errors can command anywhere from $3,000 to $15,000, depending on severity, even in beat-up condition. Asterisk, then you have the off-metal errors, where the coin is struck on a foreign or incorrect blank. 11983p was confirmed struck on a planchet, meant for a 10-cent piece, and though it had scratches, discoloration, and heavy wear, it still fetched $22,000 at auction. Asterisk. And let's not forget the spitting eagle variety, a die crack running from the eagle's beak downward, making it look like the eagle is spitting. It's a quirky and collectible detail, with prices ranging from $250 for mild examples to $7,000 for bold, dramatic versions, even with wear. Asterisk. So how do you know if your 1983 P quarter is special? Asterisk start by checking for the mint mark. If the P is missing completely and you're sure it's not worn away, get that coin checked immediately. Then examine Washington's face and the eagle's beak for doubling or ghost-like impressions. If you see odd bumps, cracks, or breaks in the fields, especially by the rim or date, that might indicate a die break or clash. And of course, weigh the coin. If it's not 5.67 grams, something's wrong and possibly valuable. Asterisk the emotional punch here. The 1983 P quarter is one of the most forgettable coins of the 1980s. It doesn't stand out. It wasn't made of silver. It doesn't have a special reverse. But that's exactly what makes it so dangerous to overlook. Because inside the most average-looking pocket change can lie a mistake. A silent, once-in-a-lifetime error that makes all the difference. Asterisk. So check those old coin jars. Look through the trays in your car. Because that faded 1983 P quarter might not just be change. It might be the coin that changes everything. Asterisk. And coming up next, we go back to one of the most beloved eras in American coins. The next quarter in our lineup has a design flaw. So rare, it took decades for collectors to even notice. And when they did, it sent shockwaves through the community. Next up is a real underdog, the 1985 D Washington quarter, Denver mint with serious environmental damage. The surface is mottled, the color's all wrong, maybe a little greenish, even black in some spots. It's been exposed to moisture, maybe even buried in dirt for decades. Washington's features are barely visible. The eagle is soft and dull, and the reeded edge looks like it's been chewed. Anyone else might toss it aside. But you won't after this. Asterisk, because one of these corroded, damaged quarters, just like this one, ended up selling for $295,000. Asterisk, yes. Almost $300,000 for a coin that looked like it came from the bottom of a lake. Asterisk. So what makes this 1985D special? Asterisk, let's rewind. Over 519 million quarters were minted in Denver in 1985. That's a massive number. And with it came a flurry of errors and oddities, many of which remain unnoticed for years, because collectors weren't looking closely at modern coins back then. But that was a mistake. Because buried among all that circulation was something remarkable. Asterisk. One of the most legendary errors from 1985D is the off-metal strike. Some of these quarters were accidentally struck on copper penny planchets, thinner, lighter, and with a reddish tone peeking through under the right light. One of these error coins, showing signs of extreme damage and corrosion, was authenticated and sold for an incredible $118,000. Another was struck on a nickel planchet, visibly off-color, and even though the rim was damaged and the surfaces pitted, it still went for $44,000. Asterisk, but it gets better. Asterisk, a double denomination error, where a 1985D quarter was struck over a previously struck Roosevelt dime, created a coin with visible layering of both designs. Even with heavy wear and oxidation, this Frankenstein-like mistake drew huge attention. And a winning bid of $295,000. Asterisk. Now think about that for a second. Asterisk, this coin didn't sparkle. It wasn't uncirculated. It wasn't framed in velvet. It had environmental damage, just like the one in your hand. But because of that rare strike, it became one of the most valuable quarters of the entire decade. Asterisk. There's also the case of dramatic die cracks and die breaks on the 1985D quarters. One featured a giant raised blob along the rim from a shattered die and still fetched $7,900 in a heavily circulated state. Another had a misaligned die with Liberty slanted and partially missing. And even though it looked awful, it sold for $9,000. asterisk. So how can you tell if your damaged 1985D might be a hidden jackpot? Asterisk first, don't ignore discoloration. What? Looks like corrosion might actually be a clue, a foreign planjet or chemical reaction during minting. Weigh the coin. If it's lighter or heavier than 5.67 grams, something's up. Examine for doubling, missing letters, odd spacing, or rotation. If anything feels off, that's your cue to have it evaluated professionally. Asterisk, and here's the emotional core of this story. Most of us would throw this coin away. It looks too far gone. But it's coins like this, with the dirt, the damage, the wear, that often carry the most incredible secrets. Because while others are chasing shiny proofs and silver brilliance, the real treasures are hiding in the ugly ones. The ignored, the written off, the quarters with stories to tell. Asterisk. So if you ever come across a 1985D quarter that looks like it's been through war, hold on tight. Because underneath that rust might be nearly $300,000 worth of history. Asterisk. And coming up next, the final coin in our countdown. It's old. It's rough. It's scratched to the point of barely being legible. But it carries a legacy and a collector value that once stunned an entire auction room into silence.
Next up, the 1966 Washington quarter. Now hold on. Before you shake your head at its rough, pitted surface and toss it back in the junk pile, look again, because this one's not just old, it's a ticking time bomb of value, and collectors are starting to realize it. 1966 was a strange year for U.S. coinage. Silver had just been removed from quarters a year earlier, and the mint was still adjusting to the new clad composition. That transition? It left behind some weird results, some of them now worth tens of thousands of dollars. Over 821 million Washington quarters were minted in 1966. Most are common and worn, like this one. But here's where things get jaw-dropping. Because during that chaotic minting year, several quarters were struck on leftover silver planchets. Yes, real silver blanks accidentally used in a year when silver was supposed to be gone. And that mistake? Today it's worth over $95,000. Think about that. A beat-up old quarter, tossed in a junk drawer for 50 years, potentially worth more than a brand new luxury car. And what's crazier, it might even look like junk. Some of the highest-priced silver error quarters from 1966 were found in very poor, even pitted condition, because no one thought to check. They spent decades in circulation, totally unrecognized, until someone finally weighed them. Now here's the trick. The standard 1966 clad quarter weighs about 5.67 grams. But if you find one weighing closer to 6.25 grams, congratulations! You may be holding a silver planchet error, an ultra-rare piece that auction houses are fighting to get their hands on. And it doesn't stop there. That same year, because of rising coin hoarding, the mint removed mint marks entirely from all coins. That means you won't see a D or S on the 1966 quarter. But even without a mint mark, there are rare die varieties, like misaligned strikes, off-center errors, or double dies, that send collectors into a frenzy. One 1966 quarter with a dramatic off-center strike and strong doubling on the word Liberty? It sold for nearly $18,000, even with clear pitting and circulation wear. And let's talk about that pitted surface for a second. Normally, damage hurts value. But in some cases, like retained strike-through errors or exposure to unusual chemicals during minting, what looks like damage might actually be a mint-made anomaly. These coins confuse even experienced graders, and some are so bizarre they're listed as unique types in collector catalogs. Collectors are desperate to find these outliers, especially from transitional years like 1966. So, how do you know if your rough-looking quarter is a treasure in disguise? First, weigh it. Just like the 1981D, the 1966 silver error will feel slightly heavier. Second, grab a magnifier. Look for signs of doubling in the date or unusual texture that looks engraved rather than damaged. Third, pay attention to the sound. Silver coins have a distinct ring when dropped on a table. It's higher pitched, almost bell-like. That ping could be the sound of $90,000 echoing across your kitchen. And don't forget, 1966 was part of the U.S. Coinage Act era. Some experimental planchets may have slipped through, and no one knows exactly how many. That's why even a very pitted 1966 quarter could explode in value. It's not about how it looks. It's about what it is. And this is only coin number 2. The next Washington quarter coming up, it defies logic and its value, over $275,000. If you're loving this hunt so far, and you're thinking about checking that old coin jar tonight, do me a favor. Tap that subscribe button right now and become part of our Coin Hunt Daily family. There's more to come. And trust me, you won't believe coin number 3. Let's move on.